Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be doing a review of Children of Earth and Sky by Guy Gavriel Kay. Now this is a book that I've been really looking forward to picking up. It is my third Guy Gavriel Kay book now, and with Kay, prior to reading this one, I had a 50-50 love-hate relationship with this author because I hated Tagada and I absolutely loved A Brightness Long Ago. It's one of my favourite books of all time. I read it in a day. I still remember my joy in reading that book. And so I was a little bit nervous going into this one because it's been 50-50 for me. And I've heard this one is nowhere near as good as A Brightness Long Ago. So I did go into it with very tempered expectations. Didn't expect it to become a favourite. Didn't expect to hate it either. I just thought it would be very mid. And to be honest with you, that's exactly what happened. It is a good book. I wouldn't say it's my favourite book. I wouldn't say it's my least favourite book. I think it's just a solid book. And I think it's the sort of book that, if you're in a little bit of a slump, or if you're just kind of sick of reading something that's really fast-paced and action-packed, this will definitely be the one for you. It is generally recommended that you read this one after A Brightness Long Ago. Now, there is a trilogy of books, A Brightness Long Ago, this book, and then All the Seas in the World or something. I can't remember the exact phrasing of the title. But the idea is that they form a loose trilogy. They are very much standalones and function as standalones. And if you read them out of order, you're not going to do yourself any injustice by doing that necessarily. But if you want to see the Easter eggs and if you want to really kind of get all the little minute details and the connections, then it's probably best to read them in that order. So that's what I am doing. This book was pretty enjoyable. I did enjoy it. There were definitely things that I had issues with, some of which I had in Ghana. So before I jump into my actual review, let me give a very, very, very brief summary of this plot. Now, this is very much a multi-POV story, but the main central plot line is that we are following an artist as he essentially goes undercover into an opposing court to learn more about them, and essentially machinations ensue. Like I said, it is multi-POV, so there are a bunch of other things happening. There are side quests happening and other storylines and other characters with their own storylines happening. But that, I would say, is the kind of central plot of what is going on. What did I love about this book? The writing is absolutely beautiful. I think that is the most common thing across all of Kay's books that I've read, regardless of me hating Tagada. It is a very beautifully written book, and this is a very, very beautifully written book. It's very lyrical. It's almost quite poetic in places. It's very sumptuous. Like, it just feels very, I don't know, luxurious in a way. That's so weird. It doesn't even make sense what I'm saying there. But if you've read this book and if you've read Kay and you like his writing, I think you'll understand the picture I'm trying to depict here. But it just feels very sumptuous. This book is also very much a slow burn, which I do love a good slow burn. It's definitely less grand on scale compared to A Brightness Long Ago, but it feels very intimate and it really works for this story. This story is really about politics and warring religious factions. It's all about intrigue and manipulating all of the different chess pieces. The intimate nature of it really adds to that because we are seeing everything as it's happening, and it's wonderful to read. And I really did love that, and that was probably my favourite part of the book. As an extension of that, it felt very cinematic. There were scenes that I could definitely imagine on TV. It was almost like some of the Game of Thrones scenes were pulled from this book because, it's just people talking about how they're going to be pulling the strings. And if you've been watching my channel even for a small while, you'll know that's something that I really love in my books, especially in my fantasy books. So it really worked for me. And the characters were also quite compelling. It is a multi-POV book, and I have to say I do think there are one too many perspectives, and I'll come on to this later. But there were two characters that I really liked. Now we follow the artist, his name is Pero, and I really loved his character. I just thought he was really intriguing, and I actually would have just liked a book following him. My favourite scenes were actually towards the end of the book, and they all featured Pero with a character who is an emperor. And their scenes were absolutely perfect. And I just wish we had more of them. I just wish we had had more time between those two characters because they're so different in so many ways. And yet something unifies them, and that thing is art. And it's just fascinating to see them interact with one another. I just loved it. Really loved it. The other thing I really liked was that the emperor was really intelligent. And I've talked about this before. I love intelligent characters in my books. And so when I saw this kind of artist trope, which I also quite enjoy, with a very intelligent, very self-aware individual. It was just perfection. The other character that I really loved, and this is the last one that I will mention, is Danica. Danica's great. I have to say I do find the name Danica to be slightly out of place in this book. I found it to be very weird because when I think of the name Danica, I think of Danica from the Sarah J Maas series that I can't even remember the name of. So it slightly jarred me, but after I got used to it, I did really like Danica's character. She's your very typical strong female character, but she has layers, she has depth, and she's very compelling. Again, I would have been very happy just to have a book about her as well, because I think we would have been able to explore more of her psyche, which would have been really cool. So I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't get more of that, but I have to say what we got of Danica, I did enjoy. The next thing I really liked, as always, with Guy Gavriel Kay, I do really like his thematic work. I think there's some really interesting exploration of religion, art, war and politics. There's also more kind of intimate themes around personal identity, finding your own path, finding your place, and exploring the things that you love just for the intrinsic value of that thing, and not doing it for any greater purpose. So I really did enjoy that too. Now let's move on to the not so good. And I'll go back to one of the things that I briefly mentioned earlier, and is that this book has way too many POVs and characters that we follow. It distracts and detracts from the overall story, in my opinion, and I found it to be very overwhelming. There is a character list, but the last thing I want to be doing when I'm reading a book is flicking in between the character list and the book as I'm reading the story. It just really interrupts my flow, and so I found that a little bit difficult, and I have to be honest with you, I never really got used to it. Normally I get used to it by like the middle of the book. Didn't really get used to it. It was just too much, in my opinion. Too much. The other thing is that this book is just way too long. I think we could have shaved off about 150 pages off the book and it would have still worked really well. I think this one is slightly longer than A Brightness Long Ago, and I actually wish A Brightness Long Ago would have been longer, but it did work. Like, it didn't need extra pages. It didn't feel rushed. This one felt like the opposite. It was too drawn out and it just did not need to be. So I definitely think that could have been cut down a little bit more. Now, this last point that I'm going to mention is more to do with the kind of character and the plot. And I think this is going to depend really on your personal preference. I love a good villain. I've said this many times before. I love morally grey characters. I love very intelligent villains, especially, and very intelligent morally grey characters. And the main villain of this book, you know, he's built up over a very large portion of the book. And we don't really meet him until the end of the book. And I just thought that was such a missed opportunity. And I guess it kind of feeds into this bigger narrative choice that the author made, which is, you know, he has this really large reputation that kind of supersedes him in a way. But at the same time, the scenes where we do get him in it, those are the best scenes. And I would have just loved a lot more time with him. And I would have actually loved a POV written from his perspective, because we get almost everybody else's perspective but his. And I just think it was a missed opportunity. Like, I think Kay would have done a really good job of shedding insight into this other side, and we just didn't get that at all, like at all, from any of the POVs, unfortunately. And so that was a little bit annoying, and I just think I would have loved this book a lot more if we had just had more of the villain in it and more time spent with that part of the world. So that was a major gripe for me, and I really wish we had had more time, but you know, it is what it is. So I gave this book somewhere between a 3.5 and a 3.75. I do think it's more on the 3.5 side, so that's really good in my opinion. That's like above average of what I typically give books, so it's not the worst book in the world, but as it compares to A Brightness Long Ago, I don't think it's nearly as good as that. I think it could have been a lot more refined. I think more time with the other side would have been really interesting, and I think less characters would have really helped keep this story focused, because it did definitely detract quite a bit. So let me know if you read this book. I'm really curious as to what others think about it, so ping down your comments in the section below and I will see you there. I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.